Okay. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. Happy Friday. I want to thank everyone for joining. We had over 100 people register for this webinar. We're pretty excited to discuss Edify. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Dustin Devan. I'm joined here by my co-founder, Mike Navarro, um, and Javier Perez, who is our Director of Customer Support. A little bit about myself. I started in commercial construction right out of college. I worked in the industry for 6 years, and then I got the great idea to leave construction to start a tech company. Some of you might know it. I'm the founder of Building Connected. If you're not familiar with Building Connected, it provides bid management and qualification services. We raised over $50 million in venture capital. We became the #1 provider of invitation to bid and qualification services across North America. We were acquired by Autodesk in 2019 for 275 million. So it was a pretty good outcome. Very proud of that organization we built. Loved the pre-con space. I think pre-con is the most important aspect of construction. Stayed at Autodesk for 2 years. Ultimately, I decided to depart because I like the startup scene and solving and working with customers on solving the next wave of problems for the industry. I've been privileged to partner up with Mike Navarro, who is my CTO, my co-founder of Ediphi. I think Mike has a very interesting story about the origins behind Ediphi. Mike, if you could tell a little bit about yourself and how you founded this within the Suffolk organization, and we have since spun this out into an independent company, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you. And really pleased to be able to work with you, Dustin. Dustin and I paired up fairly recently, earlier this year, and it's really supercharged us to offer this to the market. Now, prior to that, and how we've gotten to where we are, I have about 20 years in this industry, about half that in managing work and the other half of that in pre-construction and estimating. Anything from conceptual estimate with very little information to awarding contracts to subcontractors and getting the GMP signed with a client as a lead estimator. And how this came to be because in 2017, we looked at what was commercially available in the market, and we found that none of those solutions, and we looked at all of them and invested time from different estimators from all different regions. And we found that they didn't meet our needs. Some of those unmet needs were crucial to us because we felt that it was part of our value proposition to our clients. And at the time, I've always kind of done programming more on the side, but had hooked up the company with some automated Excel and some Excel.com add-ins, and actually realized there were some limitations to that, and that it really needed to be cloud-based. But it was enough to prove that I was capable, and it was enough to pitch that, you know what, let's not forego those important features and let's build our own, because we'll look at what we need and we'll build what we need that differentiates us from everyone else. And I think that's the product that we have today. It's been in use for 6 years in a company that it does $5 billion a year. So while we're a new startup, you have a lot of work that has gone through this platform. And so it's pretty mature for something hitting the market.
Yeah, I think that is fascinating. When I actually joined Suffolk Technologies, which was the venture capital firm started by Suffolk Construction. So I was planning to retire as a VC, but Mike showed me what he did, and it was so impressive. And the fact that it's been utilized on billions and billions of dollars in construction made me want to get the itch to move back into pre-con. A lot of people know this, but ultimate goal of Building Connected was actually to build estimating software. Invitation to bid was just a stepping stone along the way. Our plan was to do bid forms and bid analysis, and obviously, as you get those bids, you want to compare them with your budget. So ultimately, to get into the estimating space. So it was like Mike came to me with a second chance to actually achieve a real goal, because I believe pre-con is the most important aspect of construction. The most important function in construction is estimating, because at the end of the day, the estimate represents all of the project's scope and cost all rolled into one. It is the project's plan codified. And so let's take a look at the industry and how people are doing it today. and we'll talk about some of the systemic problems, and then we'll talk about some of the unique ways we are addressing those problems right now, and probably how we can help your business improve how you guys approach the pre-construction process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dustin and Mike, for your introduction. Before we get started, we're going to do a quick poll, just asking you guys a quick question. So if you guys can go ahead and answer this, we're guys going to give you a minute to answer it.
Should be quick and easy. I think we probably only need 30 seconds.
Yeah, giving them more 15 more seconds.
Sure. We're going to try to make this webinar a little more interactive. So you're going to see some polls. Some of the questions I think are kind of comical, but we'll let you be the judge.
Correct. And at the end of obviously at the end of the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A. So please go ahead and ask your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get them answered at the end. All right. So this is how the results look.
Okay, so it looks like a pretty even distribution between none and Excel desktop software. And then we have some cloud. So whether it's ProS Stack or Esticom, fantastic. We're gonna talk about each one of those demographics right now.
Let's start with Excel.
Let's start with Excel. Excel is the best tool to estimate when you are a team of one and you don't have a lot of repeatability to your business. Excel is a completely viable way to do it. The problem that happens with Excel, it's very hard to collaborate internally. It's very, very easy to break something and not realizing it. It's difficult to get leverage from one project to another. So that in and of itself, if you want to scale your organization and you're completely dependent on Excel, you're going to have limitations. So a lot of people just never want to go over what they perceive as the big lift to introduce a database estimating tool. And I actually sympathize with that. I have talked to customers that have implemented some of the other solutions we'll discuss, and the implementation process is a year or 18 months or 2 years. That's just unacceptable. And there's a lot of reasons why it's unacceptable. A lot of it has to do with the infrastructure of those technologies. We had the same thing with Building Connected. People would roll out these other solutions, whether it was SmartBid or I Square Foot, and it'd take them 6 months to get going. We would have people use Building Connected that day. We're going to get to that level with Ediphi so that you get all of the values of using Excel with none of the headaches of the onboarding process. We're not quite there yet, but we're going to get it functionally sound. And then you're going to have all of the benefits of easy to scale, easy to repeat process, historical costs in one location. You're not going to break things and then get stuck eating, 500,000 of missed scope. But Excel is the number one estimating tool in this market, and we hope that we can help you guys evolve so that you can scale your business. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about Excel and Google Sheets, which are quasi in the cloud. There is in this space a lot of companies that are truly desktop software, but they call themselves cloud. And that is confusing for customers who are not technologists. You are not in the cloud if you're required to use a Citrix login to create a virtual desktop to access your software. Basically, if you can't access the software on a web browser on any device, it's probably not a cloud software. What does that mean for you? That means for you, you're not going to be able to easily integrate those softwares with your other solutions. So you're basically creating a data silo for your organization. And that's because they're not going to have API access. The other issue is they will never be collaborative. And if you're doing any sort of business today at scale, estimating is no longer this event where you estimate once and you win the work. Yes, there is hard bids. Let's talk about more negotiating, more IPD, more RFP responses. Estimating is a process where you hopefully are advising a customer at the idea and conceptual phase, working through DDs and CDs, and ultimately winning the GMP. And in that context, estimating, you're going to need to collaborate with clients, share data, and the desktop software will never enable you or empower you to do that. So we think that technology had its place, but we need to evolve to cloud software. And in the current industry today, we see ProEst, we see Esticom, which Procore purchased, ProEst that Autodesk purchased, Stack, which is out of Cincinnati. And they're really great tools. They don't, in my opinion, connect all the dots that you should want to connect in an estimating and pre-construction solution. Specifically tying conceptual and parametric estimating with detailed cost estimating all the way through procurement. Those dots are very, very important to tie together because it helps you explain when you're talking to your project stakeholders and clients, hey, I started with this conceptual estimate, these parametric estimates. As the drawings were revised, this is where the deltas broke. This is where the deltas emerged, and this is why the cost has been adjusted. So very few software, actually, we believe Ediphi is the only one that can help you build detailed estimates using parametric and conceptual data in the cloud in real time, then connect to the bid procurement, because we offer an integration with Building Connected, because it's the #1 provider of bid management solutions, and also pull in GCGRs because you need to build your staffing plan for your projects to get a complete project scope. So we love where we're at in providing a throughput from concept all the way through GMP for you to capture and display the costs and communicate those costs effectively to your client. So we're going to touch on some very unique attributes. Next slide, please. So what I hope everyone takes away from this is that the industry needs a cloud solution. Installing desktop software, you are going to be limited. Your scalability is going to be limited. Your infrastructure cost is going to be higher. You as the estimator might not notice this, but you're going to be paying more to manage that. You want to tie in conceptual estimating, cost modeling with detailed cost estimating. And you should be able to roll your estimate through procurement to create scope sheets so you're not building these Excel spreadsheets to analyze your bids. And ultimately, you should be able to push that to your PM software so you're not recreating the wheel on what a budget and a commitment actually are. So we're going to address all those, but we hope you guys can agree on these fundamental things that we hold to be true as we're thinking about Ediphi. Next slide.
So Dustin talked a lot about those dots, and let's get into some of those dots. Let's talk about some of these things that we have that no one else has that made it so that I, as an estimator, could do the things that I needed to do more efficiently, the things that I felt like were missing. You can hit play on this. We'll talk about use groups. These are like asset classes. These are like cost buckets. These are like these things that you need to break your schedule of values into. And here you're seeing it's going to be apartments, parking, and retail in this example. Because your client needs it, and it might be different equity sources are in each one of these, so for sure they need it. But also you're going to see later in this video how that plays into historical data. Now this is actually allocating the cost. Here are some foundations. You want to think of them as one line item. You want to distribute the cost in the cost buckets. You choose the cost buckets, you choose which percentage for each of them with a simple slide bar. You've distributed your pile caps and your grade beams into those different cost buckets. You don't have to do multiple line items. It's a pain. It's not worth it, right? That also comes into play in the area sheet, which is the next video here. In the area sheet, you have the ability to allocate areas to those use groups on a floor-by-floor basis. So what you see here is the below grade and the above grade and entering in the area of each of these uses on each of these floors, some below grade parking, some retail, some apartment lobby space, as well as an apartment tower that comes up from there all the way down. But it's also the facade, the perimeter, and the floor-to-floor height of every floor so that you can derive your total gross facade. And you're going to see as we get into the next slide, there's some cool features like that too with your floor to skin ratio, but you're going to see when you get in the next slide, when we get into systems, how this comes into play. So we'll add some systems in here. And basically it's like describing the characteristics of your project. I've got piles. I've got, sheet piles for the SOE, right? There's going to be a certain structural type to it. It's like describing your project. And each one of these is a mini template or a chunk of scope that brings in a bunch of line items that are relevant to those, as you can see here. And if, by the way, table stakes, right? Database estimating tool, cross-sort it however you want. Here it's being cross-sorted by system, use group, bid package, so you can see what these systems have brought in. And expounding on the composite steel here, you see everything that got brought in. And within the context of those use groups, look, different price points for the apartment steel, the retail steel, the parking steel. Now, it's also formulas. If we go
Hold
into
on, Mike, let me jump in real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I want to go back to use groups and area sheets. We got a couple questions for the team that Javier, could you launch them?
Correct, yes. Let me launch them right now.
When you estimate,
what's that? I'm just mentioning that I launched the use groups one so people can answer those on their end. And Mike, you can go ahead and talk while they fill it out.
Yeah. Okay, great. Use groups, everyone maybe sees these. I guess as you're reading those, I'll just read them out. When you estimate how often do you have to distribute cost of a single line item across different use groups or asset classes? And when you do this, do you create multiple line items?
I think every estimator's experienced this, but we're just curious.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the results.
Yeah. Majorities all the time. And you have to break them out into single. Yeah.
I like the people that are honest. We don't care about this stuff. That's why the question's there.
Gotta keep it honest.
True story. True story.
All right, let's go to area sheets and hear from the audience.
Yeah. 1 second. Launching the area sheet poll. Please go ahead and answer it.
Does your company define what we call an area sheet? Like, do you have it in Excel? Do you do something here?
Are you trying to get the gross square footage by asset class because you want to track and normalize these over time? So you have to put these down somewhere. Do you want to know the perimeter and the floor to floor height to calculate the gross facade to distribute to make sure you have coverage?
All right, let's give it 10 more seconds and we'll end the poll. All right, these are the results.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. Fantastic. You estimate like we do. Great.
Yeah, well, I mean,
offer for you.
And the reality is that I found everyone did one of those in Excel, and we just wanted it in the same place so that you could connect the dots. And you're going to see that in one of these next slides.
Yeah, let's go to formulas.
That's it. Move into formulas.
Formulas. This is tying to that area sheet. First, we'll look at the structural steel, which is tied to the metal deck. And that's the metal deck and detailing for the apartments. All these line items you can connect to. But you have these metrics, the pounds per square foot of steel, right? Something you could talk about with your engineer, your assumption at a conceptual level. And here's that metal deck and detailing. This one's tied to that area sheet, lowest floor to highest floor total apartment area, but you could change it. There are all the floors. This one's now changing it from the third floor to the highest floor, getting that area, which automatically also updated your steel. And this assembly, we have assemblies, right? And this is basically saying my assembly quantity is that same metal deck and detailing. And it's a slab on metal deck assembly with a lot of different items in it, the formwork and the concrete. And each one of these has their own formulas in here as well, with their own metrics in here, like the amount of steel that's in the slab on a per square foot basis, so that you can be clear about it. Here's that rebar, right? 0.5 pounds per square foot. If I'm meeting with a structural engineer and he's asking that question because he doesn't have the detail, I can expand out those metrics. I can show him that number. He says, no, it needs to be, or he or she says, no, it needs to be 0.75 or 1.2. Fine. A lot of candy canes in the slab because there's a lot of openings. It's transparent. It's easily modifiable, right? Now, the other key thing I'll make before we advance, and this will go on loop, but I just want to say it. Every one of these systems brought in all of these line items with this default logic. This default logic is not a super admin creating it. Some estimator created this, and then they decided they wanted to store it thereafter to use on other projects. You give it a name, and everyone else can use it thereafter. See what it is, get into it, modify it, and maybe even change those defaults for the next ones. So,
And with that said, let's ask the audience another question about this. So if everybody can just answer it.
Yeah, I think to touch on what Mike just said, one of the reasons why this is so important, if you fill out your area sheet and anything in the area sheet changes, all of your quantities, because you're tying it into number of floors, gross square footage, gross facade, if you delete a floor, theoretically your entire estimate is updating because your quantities are tied to your parametric data that you created in our software.
right. I believe that like something like 85% of line items are directly or indirectly tied to something like an area sheet, right? So, you want to be able to turn those dials to update that area sheet and have everything update.
Okay, results. Okay. Yes, I'm doing
You're
this.
one honest, very honest person.
I don't know what you're talking about. I can't wait to. I'm following up with that
Yeah,
person.
my wife doesn't know either, so it's okay.
Okay, next section.
Okay. Moving on.
Okay, we're going to be talking about unit mixes. I actually saw that we have some real estate developers on this call. This will definitely pertain to you. Look, when you're deciding about a project, a lot of times it's about programming what's going in that project and building out, if you're a real estate developer, a pro forma, or perhaps you as a GC are told that are working with clients and they're giving you templates. I've done work for Kaiser before. They have a template for exactly what a patient room is. It's a great example for how you can use unit mixes to accelerate your pre-construction process, but also give you an atomic structure that you can update and will systemically update almost all of the interior costs of your project. We're not playing the loop right now. Javier, can you play it?
Yes.
Thank you. So what unit mixes allow you to do is define in high level of detail an estimate, in this case, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and program those by floor across your entire project. And what this is doing is pulling in all of that scope, giving you an efficiency factor, because we all know you need to make room for other things. But at the end of the day, what the client's concerned about, especially in when multifamily, which this is an example of, is how many units am I getting? Because I need to tie those units to a pro forma. And we need to make sure with the efficiency factor that we're leaving enough space for elevator landings, lobby areas, hallways, janitor closets, and whatnot. Now, each one of those rooms is associated with a detailed estimate that can be adjusted based upon the costs that are adding up to in your estimate. So if maybe you want to lower some of the costs, you might want to change what's being programmed in here. You can easily do that. You can also go through the detailed assumption of what is this particular room, because that room is now multiplied by everywhere you programmed. So it's a way to quickly estimate, show all the qualifications to the client on how you're deriving your costs in a very digestible manner that I think a lot of people are much more related to than just line items on a spreadsheet that hard to detail out how you derived at those quantities. It's particularly good in conceptual estimating. The other thing that it's really great at, if you build early on your estimate like this, and then you get the drawings and you're doing your takeoff of all the carpet, and there's a big disconnect between how you derive your quantity and what the quantity is that you got from OST, you need to go figure out, well, what were my room assumptions versus what did they actually deliver to me? And that's the conversation to have to a client, because if what you were assuming for your rooms is not what the drawings actually show, either the drawings need to be updated to reflect that, or the pro forma needs to be updated to reflect the new room. So we love unit mixes. We think this works well in schools, on hospitals, on healthcare. Let's see if you guys are familiar and use it. So let's open up the poll, the next poll.
While you guys are doing that, I'll just tell you I've had plenty of use cases using the unit mix where it's like, hey, what if we were to delete one floor? Delete the floor of the building. Not only do you get the update on the area sheet and all the floor-to-floor heights, and therefore any of the vertical elements of the building like egress stairs, but all the units got deleted from that floor. And so therefore you still have all those line items like the painting and the drywall and the appliances, but they've been updated to increase to look to with a lower unit count, right? On all the units that were on that deleted floor. You want that answer? It's a click.
Perfect. All right. How are our results? All right. Most people do this because we have to assume something. Some people are only doing plans and specs, totally understand. And I love this person who's consistently following us and staying online, but doesn't know what we're talking about.
I
We
just gotta
appreciate
text
you
my
being
wife
here,
and tell her
yeah.
to hang up. Hang up, honey.
Let's go ahead and go to rooms.
All right.
So another supporting feature, which is similar to the unit mix, but has its own distinct value, are rooms. And you can think of unit mixes as these repeatable scopes. Generally, a unit, though, is a composition of more than one room. A room can simply define any room in your project, but could be standard rooms that you always know you're going to account for. So in this example, we have apartment common rooms that we know we generally need to account for in every apartment complex. So it pulled the general rooms that we want to make sure we have coverage for. It also includes a detailed finish schedule. So you can actually go through what assumptions you have for each room's finish schedule with the architect and the client. You can talk about, why is the amenity so expensive? Well, this is what I have. Okay, well, let's not go that high end on the flooring. Maybe it's terrazzo or something, and we can do a VE. Everyone loves VE, which is really, we all know, just deleting some scope. We can go ahead and do that. So rooms allows you to infill outside of the unit mixes, the other rooms that are going to be necessary to operate the building. And generally, you might have like a janitor closet on every floor. And so you can tie that room to a system that pulls quantity equals the number of floors across the project. And so that's another reason we're able to tie in the area sheet and the floors into creating an estimate, especially early on, very, very quickly. Rooms also contain all of the additional line items, so you can program them in. If it's a conference room, you can add a marker board, maybe a table, maybe a TV, whatever it may be, and contain all of the costs associated with those. So rooms is another benefit that we've put into Ediphi that we really haven't seen elsewhere in the estimating market, but we think has tremendous value. And so maybe we'll open it up for one more poll, or not one more poll. We have a few more things.
Yeah, let's launch it again.
By the way, you were seeing a system adding all those rooms. If you add a bunch of rooms, you can do them manually, or if you like the rooms you added and you want to use them for your next project, you can give it a system name. You can batch add all those rooms in.
15 more seconds.
We really want any work you do within your estimate to feel like it's reusable thereafter anywhere else.
Okay, how we
Let's
doing our
take a look at
results?
the results.
Okay, same. I mean, we're seeing the same distribution of individuals. So perfect. At least we're aligning with the majority of individuals on here. And now we're going to get to, for the people that are doing the 100% CDs and hard bid, we can definitely talk about what we offer. And Mike's going to take it from here on contracting.
Cost
Great.
modeling, actually.
Oh, we'll do cost modeling.
Oh,
All right,
cost
so
modeling.
cost modeling. So do you guys remember when we talked about use groups and I said it's not just about those cost buckets, but it's also about historical reasons? Well, this is the historical reason. You want to be able to benchmark any of your estimates. You want to then be able to change that project size or that gross area to filter down into these benchmarks and finds the one that is most relevant to the one that I want to compare it against now for comps. But you also want to be able to compare just one use group of one project against just one use group of another. So when you benchmark your project, you're not just getting the whole project, but you're getting each of its use groups as a separate benchmark. This is great for examples where you may have an apartment above a casino versus an apartment above a parking garage, one diluting the cost of the total project and one making it much higher. You just want to analyze apartment against apartment. So you can see here the different cost benchmarks that get brought in, an average and a delta where you can load in your estimate and get a delta from your comps. as well as do all that level of sorting that you do, such as bid package, master format, uniformat, or any other of the sort codes that you want to configure in your environment. Do we have a question on cost? Do we have a question on
We
cost models?
do. Yeah, let me launch it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Is there benefit to using use groups for your benchmarks? Right. The other thing I'll say is like, I have failed at implementing historical database solutions in the past because it was hard getting the data in. It's got to be in the same place where your estimating application is, so it's easy to migrate into a benchmark.
It's exactly right. I've talked to contractors all over the country, and I won't say the software. They loved what the software does. They just couldn't effectively get all the data in the software.
I agree with that, and that was my experience as well.
Okie dokie. What are the results? Oh,
we converted the
100%.
one person, or they dropped off the call. One or the other. They're just like, I don't know anything.
You did tell your wife to leave, so.
Yeah, that's true. I did send her the text.
All right.
Fantastic. Okay, on to contracting.
Contracting. Okay, you did your estimate. You have your line items. We all call them bid tabs, scope sheets, tally sheets, all sorts of names. It's all about what is my scope, who are my bidders, qualifying them. The difference here is that it's connected to your estimate. You can bring your line items in, right? Then you're qualifying your bidders. You're saying what they have, what they don't have on a scope for scope level. You're really ironing out that final detail to go from your estimate into what you're actually procuring, each of these subcontracts that ultimately roll up into usually something like a GMP. But there's also a buy sheet. This is about actually doing the award. This is about, I have a base bid for this person, what is included in what I'm awarding to them, versus what am I not awarding to them, but their cost to complete. So I need to add to it to get to my total number that I'm going to carry with my client. These buy numbers you can put a best and final on it if you're negotiating it. And so that you can actually say, well, no, their number's actually landing at this, and it's calculating a buy savings. You hit award on that. It's summing up all your buy savings. It's recording the award. It's giving your executives a view of all this bidding activity and this award activity, and it's calculating your percent award for your project. So do we have one for contracting too?
Oh, yeah.
We do. Yes.
Okay. Those line items that get brought in, they get brought in as a one-time. And then if you change them in the estimate, you can choose to refresh them within your scope sheets. So you have that option. That link is maintained.
I mean, I just think of how often you're recreating a component of your estimating in an Excel spreadsheet to do your bid tally sheets. And the idea is you should never have to do that because you've created your estimate, and that's a foundation for making sure you have scope coverage.
Yeah.
Okay, the results are in. We do this currently we do this. Okay, so everyone's doing this either in Excel, but wish it was tied to ITBs. One person wishes it was tied to ITBs. Well, let's go to the next section. We absolutely think it should be tied to ITBs. We do not do ITBs or qualifications. There's a company that I know the founder of really, really well that does it pretty good. And so we offer an integration with Building Connected. So you can invite your subcontractors to bid and get the bid proposals back to do your bid analysis. We'll be working on, not yet available today, working on creating scope sheets that can then take the place of the bid form on Building Connected so that you can have a two-way sync so that as those scope sheets are created here, you can push to Building Connected. As bids are input in Building Connected, we can pull that back in here to complete the buying process. So we're not moving into the qualification, invitation to bids sheet space. We think that there is a very, very great handoff to be had between estimating and procurement and the invitation to bid and qualify space. In Ediphi, we actually even pull the qualification data and give a report to your risk managers to see how much work estimators are considering every contractor across your entire portfolio. So different way to manage risk, which I have not seen in other solutions. But when you start thinking about risk, it's not just the projects you've awarded, but what are you potentially about to award with them that could overburden these subs in the future? And so this is going to give the industry another way to better manage risk of the subcontractors you're about to bring on your project. So we have one more poll. We do. I'm always fascinated to see how many
Yeah,
people you.
I was gonna say the founder's on the call, so you gotta lie and
Don't click on it, Dustin.
don't click on. You try to click on no and it doesn't work. Your cursor.
Yeah. All right, let's give 10 more seconds. The answer might surprise
Don't have
you,
much
Dustin.
longer in this webinar. We promise we're going to get to Q&A, but how are the results?
50-50.
Oh, BC is 50% and 50% no. Well, at least hey, 50% is a pretty good market share. Fascinating. All right, one more section in the product, and then we're going to open up to Q&As. I think this is the most overlooked thing in pre-con, because this is where you have to get buy-in from your ops team. So Mike, take it away on GCGRs.
Great. And I'll say, by the way, that typically this estimating software, the incumbents, you have your estimators in it. There are more project managers and operations people in the platform than estimators. And one of the reasons why is because of the bid tabulation, but also the general conditions, general requirements. You can hit play,
Mike,
Javier.
you know, another reason, Mike, is because they're desktop software and they require you to install a Citrix login, and the ops people don't have the program to do that. You can't get
Fair.
it.
And this is real easy to share the application or share with one of your ops people. And you can see here, we're adding in positions that you can configure. These are all just NFL player names for this year's roster, but you can add people from your business in here, their positions, the default salaries and car allowances, and you can allocate the percentage of their time, not just at the total, but on a month-to-month basis, as you see here, right? And you saw that there were formulas there too for the start and finish dates. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of that, but you can also do phases in here. So if in your construction, it's not just about pre-con and construction, it's about in the construction, there's enabling and maybe there's ground up. Well, those have dates, those have phase dates, which you can do formulas. Here, I'm doing an offset of 100 days from the start date is when construction begins. These can also be tied to schedules. We'll show a little bit of that too, but now you're adding in positions to this phase. And by adding positions to this phase, they're inheriting the phase start and end dates, right? Now, there's also the rate buildup. And in the rate buildup, you can see that you can configure your multipliers, you can configure your vacation and how many weeks, of vacation time you're assuming. You have your per week costs that you can configure with your admin controlled regional defaults that can be overridden on each project, which all comes up to a rate that we all know is like way lower than any one of these people, but that's okay. It's all fake data. And here's that schedule. And so it's a Gantt chart. Now I see my positions and I see where they overlap within my schedule. Not only do I see where they overlap within my schedule, I can click on one of these positions. I can click on one of these schedule activities, and I can actually tie the start or the finish date of one of these people to any two nodes within this schedule. As you can see that schedule relationship now. So if the schedule changes, so too does the start and end date of that person change. Now that's great for your staff. But what about all the other people, the carpenters, the journeymen, the laborers? We have the concept of being able to create these people, these positions that you can then assemble crews. And you can have crew defaults. You can see one says like a save as template, or you can create your own in your own project. And here one is being created. And what that's doing, that's being able to save it for your, for others to use. Then you can fill that down, and actually it knows what week each one of those crews is in. And you can see there, it's showing how the crew is composed in the period of time that crew is for. If this project pushes out or is multi-year, it's going to ramp up those rates so that it gets, every single week it gets the actual effective cost. Here's an example of line items in here where you again have that formula editor. You can say, hey, this formula, I want it to be equal to the, total number of staff times, say, the duration of the project in, let's say, weeks. Fine, round to the whole. And that's my car rental. Now, as I change my staffing, I don't even have to worry about car rental. It's just like car rental is taken care of because I know that everyone's got car rental for that period of time of the project. Project changes, number of people change, automatically that line item updates, right? All the dots in one place.
Fantastic, Mike. Guys, we covered everyone on this call. We covered so much, and yet there's a lot more to get through. So we're going to open it up to Q&A. I just completed 2 answers by typing them in. So I'll read the questions and answers I shared with them. Our bid invitations going through Ediphi are being received in the system as well. We are not initiating any invitations to bid. That would be done through Building Connected. The current integration allows you to pull bid responses and the bidder data of people that have accepted from Building Connected, so those records come into your scope sheets for your bid analysis. Another question is, will subcontractors have access to Ediphi in the future? If they do, where does Building Connected fit? We are working on collaboration and value engineering and managing that workflow. So theoretically, key subs would be able to contribute to VE responses if you had that sort of project. In terms of invitation to bid, we have no interaction with for subs. There will be a component where we help them negotiate, where you can negotiate back and forth on contracts. But we are not looking to be an invitation to bid software or qualification tool. That is actually quite a big lift to manage the network, to do what Building Connected and does with the network and contact management and those things. So we want to be very good at what we're tackling right now, which is a tremendous amount, and not take on more than we can handle. Okay, other questions?
A few more in there.
Yeah, can the line item formula be deleted by accident like in Excel? So that's a great question. Actually, you can type over the value, but we retain all of the formula information. So if you delete what you typed in, it'll return back to the quantity derived by the formula. So you can't break it. We also have versioning controls and tracking who's made what changes when. So that's just the advantage of software. We're giving you the confidence that you're not going to break anything. Mike, you want to take the next one?
Sure.
Next two.
Can my operations folks be working the GCGRs at the same time as my estimators, building the estimate on the same project? Yeah, that's like the main use case for it, right? You want your ops guy, you're in charge of those GCs, man. You just tell me the number. Now, I've personally been on projects where it's like, oh, the number's 10 million on the GCs and GRs. I plug it in, we send it to the client. Oh, man, that really needs to be 11.5. Oh, it's like, well, I don't know what you're doing over there, man. Like, so you got to share that with me. And here we very typically have someone working in the GCs while someone's working in the estimate, and it's multi-user. So multiple people can be working in the estimate. Then the estimator can choose to link to that GC file, which feeds into their estimate. They choose when they want it to link. They can even override that link in the same way Dustin just described with formulas, but they control that data coming in when they want it to come in, right? So that's a major advantage to having both of those dots in the same place.
Mike, I'm going to take the next one.
Yeah.
Josh, good to hear from you. I see your question. We actually started our career at Bechtel together, so that's cool. His question is, does Ediphi also support continuing to estimate changes once the project has commenced? It would be great to leverage the assumptions areas to quickly respond during the execution. Fantastic question. There is no reason why you couldn't continue to estimate, because I know people that are breaking around and they don't even have a GMP set with the client, right? So like, yes, theoretically continue to use us. As things change, you can continue to update, revising the owner calls, revising those things. We really want to support that. If you think about long-term where we take that, I think that we are very apt to create a financial management system that doesn't break in the handoff between pre-con and project management, which it does today, and no one actually talks about it, but it's totally broken.
True story.
Let's ask, I think this one would be for Michael from, I believe it says, and GCs, are there securities to lockdown rates, PTO, etc., to only be available for certain pre-com positions?
Yeah. So the way this works is that you have granular permissions on the project level. And so you can invite, say, a project executive, and all they can do is work in the GCs. And then all your estimators, they can't even see what's going on in the GCs. They get the answer that can feed in, but the project owners have that control over what someone sees and what someone doesn't. I struggled when we built a lot of this kind of stuff in Excel automated. I struggled to control what people could see and not see. Everyone figured out ways to see whatever they wanted to. Here, you can actually control that, right? So was there a part B to that? It looks like it disappeared.
That should be just that question.
Okay.
And then we have another question. Can I export this Gantt chart into P6?
So that's actually a great way to say what the Gantt chart is for in here, because the Gantt chart here is meant to be the thing that you do more at a conceptual level and then be imported into P6. So our philosophy is to then get it into P6, right? Now that would be like one of their like XML imports right now, and we're looking at better ways to do integrations.
Okay, one, how does historical cost work estimate to estimate? Can I see costs other people have used in their estimate? Yes, so you can, on any line item, you can click on view historical costs, and you can see every time that line item has been used, as long as it's part of your unit price catalog across your organization, and see what number they put so that you can see how far off if you're adjusting your unit rate. Yeah, so complete visibility. If you're pulling from your UPC and not just creating custom line item on the fly, you're going to see every time that that's used. Another question, can we get a copy of this video to rewatch? Everyone after this meeting is going to get a copy of this webinar, and please share it, spread it on LinkedIn, tell the world that this estimating solution is cool if you think it's cool.
All right, we have a couple more questions here. I think this one might be go for Michael. Can the line item formulas be deleted by accident like in Excel?
Oh, that one Dustin just took. You can override any logic and revert back to the logic if you want, so you don't lose the formula.
Next question, how does, oh, sorry, guys, go ahead, Dustin.
So how easy is it to import historical data? That will be a big resistance to a company like Bechtel to use, where we have 125-year history. So it's modern infrastructure. Each company is going to be given their own database. We can work on giving you data pipelines and import it in. We've imported thousands of estimates because we had to import a $5 billion company, and now Bechtel's a lot bigger. But at the end of the day, it's just creating a map. Any individual can import into the solution. So it depends on the level of complexity and how structured the data is. The more structured the information is, the easier it is to create the pipelines. Yeah.
Okay. And next
Rest
question.
assured, we have teams and people ready to help that gigantic problem should it occur.
All right, we got a couple more. So how does cost work region to region in the cost database?
I guess I'll take that one. So the way it works is that your environment, right, and everyone has their own database, and we can give you one of these, what we call a unit price catalog or a database of items. But let's say you have your own. Let's say you have 5,000 items. Every single one of those items has a regional opinion of cost. So for every region you want, that region has an opinion on each of those 5,000 items. Now, the reason why that matters, and the reason why you want it on the same 5,000, even if some regions aren't using some of them, right, is because if you're doing one project in one region and it is something that is very similar in another, you want to be able to duplicate that estimate out into that other region's project and refresh the numbers and get that region's pricing. So that's the philosophy that allows those kind of use cases.
Nicole, won't say your last name. You rock too. Thank you.
Sweet.
Good to hear from you, Nicole. Look at that. I think there's a question in there.
Yeah, and the question is, as an estimator is scoping out and pricing with units and area, is a written scope document being derived to provide to the client alongside the estimate? Excellent, excellent question to help codify the qualifications and assumptions in your project. Mike, we do not do that yet, but I think it is something that obviously we should do in the future. I think it's absolutely perfect.
I totally agree. And I say all the time, just to hit that for a beat, It's like, well, look, if I do a conceptual estimate with little information and I actually show you what my pounds per square foot of steel is and everything, it's like my assumptions are clear. But then the next thing is well, what are you going to do? You're going to give like 5 pages to a client, be like, look at all my assumptions. Like they want a narrative that they can digest. And I think that's that next step.
So we are assessing some executive summaries and some reporting tools to surface this in a digestible, whether it's the list of owner qualifications, but that reporting function is absolutely what we need to provide our customers.
Hmm.
Question about pricing model. It really does depend on the organization, the scale, some API access, but generally we're charging per user per year. So generally we're charging per user per year, but it's highly dependent.
We have another one there from Josh. Do you have preloaded unit rates, mix rate, mixes, areas, etc., for use when this is initially implemented, or does each company need to define and design in their own workspace?
Great question. So today, we, in our trial environment, provide you something to test with. When you get going, we would import your unit rates. However, by the end of the year, we will be able to provide you a unit price catalog from us to you that will work anywhere in the United States, Canada. So that is about a month away from testing privately, but then that is a value-added service we want to provide everyone so that you don't have to come to us and spend all this time importing everything to get going. So we are very quickly working on that. It also helps a lot of people with Excel systems don't have that ability. So that should be ready to go sooner rather than later. It's been in the works for a while.
Next question, how do you get the estimate out of Ediphi?
So our philosophy is PDF and Excel. So we actually were first using like Excel side reporting, like with an Excel add-in. We don't really believe in that in the future. So right now in the application, you can download some PDFs, and then it will be shortly thereafter, like by the end of this year, getting Excel out of it as well. So you want the area sheet, you download that to PDF or Excel. You want your detailed estimate, you download that to PDF or Excel.
Thank you.
Are there integrations available with pricing databases like RSMeans? There are not currently integrations available with pricing catalogs like RSMeans. We are hoping to provide you our version of pricing catalog. You're certainly able to always update your UPC as things vary. Yeah, we don't have that integration today. We could talk about some solutions that we're seeing customers do. It really depends on how big your organization is and where you do work.
And I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
How do you develop those? Go ahead.
How do you develop those? Was this in context to the UPC and aggregate it from your customers? Can you opt out of having their data leverage? We're not leveraging your data. We're actually doing this on our own in isolation, and we're getting. So the question is referring to if we're building up a UPC, is other people's information contributing to it? No, we're doing this standalone. No other information is contributed to us assessing the market value of a UPC. Basically, what we're doing is confirming costs in one particular market and tracking how markets vary across the top 50 metropolitan areas in order to take our unit price catalog that we can provide and transform it from one market to another. So there will be no intermixing of customers, what the customers' costs are. This will be our opinions of costs, one market transformed to another.
All right, last question. I miss how the takeoff is getting into Ediphi. Is the takeoff done in Ediphi or imported into it? If within Ediphi, is it area takeoff only?
0.1 miles.
Takeoffs can be done in any way you like in your estimating tool, and it's just you're manually putting those in right now. And so if you do a linear, as long as your UPC was configured to linear, but for that line item, then you can convert it. So yeah, it's a manual process. Takeoff is done outside, and we're working for ways, whether you're doing 3D or 2D takeoff, on the best ways to get that information in. But right now it's a manual process. However, what we see in a lot is, and I touched on it earlier, because we do a lot of programmatic parametric conceptual estimating, it is a really good check, because when you do your takeoff and your conceptual, if those quantities are materially different, then either there's some scope not in your 2D takeoff, or something's drastically changed on how you built yours up from a conceptual basis that you need to have a conversation with your client about. So we think it's a really good sanity check for those design development conversations. But yes, it's manual. We can't do everything to everyone. There's a lot of great software for takeoff. We're going to make it a lot easier, especially on the 3D side. That'll be sooner rather than later. And then eventually we want to provide you a takeoff tool in our application. One more question that we're calling it a day. Is there a one-way integration to push final budgets to Procore? There is not, but there will be. That's after we get the BC wrapped up. That's the next one we want to tackle, because everyone knows that getting project costs and a project set up in Procore is time consuming. And so we'd like to save you that time so that you can get to managing your projects.
Time consuming and error prone.
And with that, I would love to thank everyone that joined. Wonderful questions. Contact myself or Mike. We're very excited about Ediphi, pre-construction. I'm very excited to get back in the game. And so we are here and we're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you for both for answering all these questions. And we had one last poll going on. We'll let it run for 15 more seconds, and then yeah, we'll end the call and wish everybody a great Friday and a great weekend.
All right. We can end it.
All right. Awesome. Perfect.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, everyone. Have a great weekend and take care.